Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm Gino Ruddy. You know, I've spent over 4 decades working in the game. Fortunate enough to meet some of the great legends of the game, saw them come into the league, watched them shine in the game. Now they've moved on to life after hockey. The 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast gives us a chance to catch up, tell some great stories, relive some great memories, and hear what these guys are up to today. Today, one of the greatest setup men in NHL history. He was the front man of Hall & Oates, a tandem that just ripped up the NHL, played 19 seasons in the NHL, averaged over a point a game in 1,337 games he played. He finished up with 1,420 career points, named one of the top 100 players in NHL history, Hockey Hall of Famer in 2012, my buddy Adam Oates. Adam, welcome. Great to chat with you again. I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Let me take you back, and I didn't warn you about this, so let me take you back to a time when you would have been probably 17, 18 years old, playing lacrosse at Pine Point Arena for then the Etobicoke Eclipse, and there was television cameras in the building, and there was somebody working the microphone calling play-by-play. Do you have any recollection of McLean Hunter cable TV giving you that initial exposure to you as an athlete that will go on to change your life?
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't remember. That's a long time ago, man.
I was on the microphone calling the play-by-play for McLean Hunter cable TV back in the days where you were ripping up lacrosse for the Etobicoke Eclipse. And that was the first time, for those who don't know, you were an amazing lacrosse player back in your lacrosse days. And it was a lot of fun to watch you go through that kind of stuff. It feels like a lifetime ago. What are your memories of being a lacrosse player in the city of Etobicoke growing up?
You know what? Like you said it, I grew up in Etobicoke, and in that area, lacrosse was a hotbed. And, I played hockey in the winter, lacrosse in the summer. And obviously looking back, playing a lot of lacrosse was very good for my hockey because 12 months a year, I got a violent game. I had to learn how to in lacrosse, you get hit a lot back then with wood sticks, right? So we had cross checking. So you learned how to take contact. You learn how to give it and how to take it. And that obviously was very good for my hockey career.
I saw a quote somewhere, and I want to get you to react to it because I would never use this term about you. I didn't know a lot about your hockey career at that point, and you were just kind of starting to make your mark at that point. And you referred to yourself as a punk when you were 19 years old. What did you mean by that?
You know what? I was playing junior hockey. You're getting a little bit of cash. And at that time, a little bit of cash was a lot of cash in your mind, right? And like every guy, you think you're going to make the NHL. So school was nothing to me. School became back burner. So I ended up, now I'm arguing with my parents every day because they want me to go to school. And I'm being a bit of a punk kid, right? Like, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm playing junior. And, because you're dumb, right? Like at the end of the day, you're naive and dumb and you think you're going to make it. And meanwhile, I'm working at a gas station making $100 every 2 weeks and you think you're rich, right? And so I warred with my parents for a long time, and I was being a punk kid at that time, for sure.
Why don't you tell our audience what you did to your dad's car back then?
Well, we had this car. It was a Cougar. My dad, it was his baby. He restored it, and he would never let me drive it. And I drove it, and it caught on fire and burned up. So at that Oates household at that time, for a period of time, but things were not that good.
How did you burn a car? Like, what did you do?
It really wasn't my fault. Like I'm driving the car, and all of a sudden, we're talking way back when, right? Like 1978. The cars weren't what they are today, and one of the wires kind of caught on fire while I was driving it. I pulled over. Next thing you know, it's in flames.
Wow,
Crazy.
Wow.
I know,
Okay.
crazy.
All right, so humble beginnings, and at that point, you really wanted to be a hockey player, but you weren't catching on. Unlike your Cougar, your career was not catching on fire. Forgive me. Sorry, Oatsy, it was too easy. You're playing junior in the OPJAHL, which was tier 2 hockey in the province of Ontario at that point. I think you were playing for the Markham Waxers, were you not?
Yep, it was. Yep.
Yeah, you were playing for the Markham Waxers, and the NHL draft comes up in 1982 and you don't get drafted. You don't get enough attention there to get drafted, but you did catch the attention of a U.S. school, RPI, a very good hockey school, and a particular guy by the name of Paul Allen who saw you. Walk me through how that all happened and how that changed the future of where you ended up going.
I mean, it ended up changing my life, but you're playing junior hockey, tier 2, and I'm doing good in tier 2. It's not like I'm not doing well. And Steve Thomas is my left winger, and so we're both very frustrated because nothing's happening. And then I don't get drafted, so obviously that's devastating to a guy back then. And honestly, I'm playing tier 2, and I'm gonna age out. And one day at Dixie Arena, downtown Toronto in Mississauga, Paul Allen came up to me, and I really at that point knew nothing about American college. It was all Canadian junior and pro, right? And so he talked to me, he talked to my dad, and I literally was not going to school at that time. So we ended up a couple conversations where if I go back to school, get my grades, I got a scholarship to RPI. So talk about somebody giving you like your last chance. I got it and was very lucky, very lucky.
And it really changed your life. I mean, it was interesting because
Absolutely.
just as background, people were a little concerned about your speed at that point. And you went from your self-proclaimed punk kid who just said, no, I'm going to freaking do this. And you and Stumpy Thomas start ripping up the O in tier 2. You get noticed, you get your scholarship opportunity, but you don't bail at that point. You don't say, okay, I did it, I accomplished it. You go through your first year of college, and then the next summer, you start to say, I'm listening to what the guys want me to work on, and I'm going to work on that. Talk to me about how you started to say, target on what you needed to fix, and then how you went and did it.
So my college coach was a really, really good hockey man, Mike Odessa, fantastic. And I was at that age where he kind of won me over. And he said to me during the season, look, you got to work on your skating. If you want to go to the next level, you got to work on your skating. I'm like, okay, what do I do? And he said, so you go work with a skating coach named Paul Vincent in Boston. And I never went home again. I went and lived at Paul's house 3 straight summers. I was never a fast skater for sure, but he definitely made me more agile, quicker, all the other sort of attributes that go into skating. And you know what, really helped me and gave me an opportunity, probably just enough that they would overlook the slow speed.
And you did it, because then all of a sudden you become an All-American a couple of times. You're a finalist for the Hobey Baker, which is basically best player in U.S. college hockey. When that started to happen, did the whole dream of where you could end up one day get rekindled in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. I would say my sophomore year, when things started to go good and our team was doing good, and now you're getting attention and got a couple of awards. So next thing you know, you're really, you ramp it up, right? You start really believing in it and training harder, and it becomes all consuming.
And now you start getting calls from NHL teams because you're a free agent. You're not drafted. You're a little bit older. Walk me through the kind of calls you got and who was calling and what that felt like to suddenly be the center of attention and not somebody who was trying to force your way through a door.
Yeah, obviously very different. I went from floundering to all of a sudden I'm a late bloomer basically, and because I'm a late bloomer and a free agent back then, I was a guy that a lot of teams were interested in. So I went and did a lot of interviews and ended up signing with Detroit, which was a great situation for me.
And all of a sudden there's cash. Now you can take care of your dad's old Cougar and help him restore it.
Yeah.
You signed the richest.
Just so that got mentioned. Just so you know.
Oh, really? Talk to me.
Oh, yeah, for
about
sure.
that.
Oh, yeah. Dad, we always had debts with Dad, for sure.
That's hilarious. Did you ever get to pay him back?
I bought my dad, our first Christmas, I bought my dad a Jaguar, his dream car.
Nice. Yeah. That's a nice little upgrade for those who remember what the Mercury Cougar looked like. That's a nice upgrade.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah.
So you signed your first NHL contract, a 4-year deal, $1.1 million, which at that point was an enormous number for a rookie. I think it was the highest salary because it was 85, 86 for a rookie. What was that like when you suddenly realized, yeah, guys really want me here?
You know what? As you can imagine, like you go from you don't have a dollar in your pocket to now you got some money. And quite honestly, more money than you can kind of like understand. And, it's a little bit overwhelming. But now I'm going to the NHL and I wasn't a dumb kid. Like I know this is going to be a really, really hard step. And so I was trying to focus on that.
What was that transition like? Because I know things didn't go real well with Harry Neal, initially the Red Wings coach.
Yeah, you know what? I would say, obviously, myself, I didn't play as good as they wanted, but the team got off to a horrible start. Um, Horrible, and myself included. And they sent me to the minors, which obviously is once again devastating to a player at that time. And the team was going through its own issues, and they ended up making a coaching change, and then they made another one, and then Jacques Demers took over my second year.
What was that like with Jacques Demers? He's a pretty special guy.
Yeah, Jacques was good, and it took me a while to win him over for sure, because he has his, just like everybody, every coach has his sort of like plan, and Jacques, I would say, would be what you would call a defensive guy, but obviously he's got Steve Yzerman.
Yep.
So we can't have, and I viewed Stevie as an absolute fantastic player, and he was fantastic. So I'm sitting there trying to be his sort of understudy, but we're also a defensive team. So I'm sort of like last on the list there. We had Sean Burr and John Shabbat. We had a good center crew. So I'm still at that age where I'm just trying to make it, right? And trying to become a regular is what me and my dad would always say, you're really not in this league until you're a regular. And I would still say that today. It's really you got to know that you have to know that you can have a bad game and it's okay.
What's it like for you at this point emotionally, Adam? Because you're a kid who's always been just a little bit lower than the guys who these competing against, and you're trying to get them to elevate you. That changed dramatically once you established yourself in the NHL. But up until this point, you went undrafted. Nobody was really paying attention. You had to sign as a free agent. When you made it to the NHL, you had to go through the A. It wasn't the path of a lot of guys that we talk to on a weekly basis here, where they just kind of rocketed on. You had to battle through a lot of stuff, including being traded from Detroit to the St. Louis Blues. What was that like emotionally for you during that time?
You know what? Honestly, there's not a lot of guys that have a path like a Wayne Gretzky or Steve Yzerman that right from junior on you're a star. There are a lot of guys that have adversity, right? I looked at it as, I want to be an NHL player. I had adversity, a lot of struggles, a lot of soul searching, lonely moments. You're looking to your friends for help, your dad, your agent, everybody's trying to give you advice. But there was also an inner belief that I could still make it. And then we had my fourth year in Detroit. We ended up losing early, first round, and they traded me to St. Louis. And I was at school finishing my degree when I heard. And, another sort of devastating blow in a sense where it's like, Detroit doesn't want you, right? Where it's funny, that's my dad, where some people would say, oh, St. Louis wants you. No, me and my dad, Detroit doesn't want you. That's how we took it, right? And my dad's right. They didn't want me, right? So that's hard. But then there's a part of you that says, I'm still trying to get this done.
It's crazy. We've been talking now for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes, and you mentioned your dad like 4 times. Talk to me about, to the point you feel comfortable, about your relationship with your dad and how much he was a part of this whole journey for you.
I mean, I would say a lot of guys would say the same thing, not just my dad, my parents, right? Where I was a very lucky kid. I grew up in Toronto. We're a happy household. I got to play ball hockey every day. I get to play hockey all year round, lacrosse, what I would call a tremendous childhood. I was very lucky. And I had my dad was British and was raised during the war in a boarding school. So we had a very strict household. And looking back, I loved it. Like my dad's approval mattered to me, kind of like every game, which a lot of guys would say that, I'm sure. And my parents were great to me about my sports, and they're also tough on me and sort of like, kind of like, I'm sure in his mind was made you a man type of thing.
And it did change your life. I mean, to use your quote, when Detroit didn't want you, when you and your dad sat down and said, okay, they didn't want you, it changed your life. Could there have been a bigger moment for you than the transition? It's not what you would have picked, but the transition to the St. Louis Blues and the role that played in making Adam Oates ultimately a Hockey Hall of Famer.
Yeah, for sure. No question. I mean, I went from very upset, of course, and then all of a sudden I go to training camp in St. Louis, and I got traded with Paul McLean, who was a little bit of like a big brother to me there. So he helped the trade. He had changed teams before, and that's another thing that people don't quite understand is sometimes when you're traded, it's a bit weird, right? Like you know, it's like getting fired and you're starting a new job the next day. It's not that easy, right? And he helped me through that little bit of transition, and then I met Hully. And Brian Sutter was our coach, and he was fantastic to me. And you know what? We just, right from day one, we clicked. And we clicked as two guys, two buddies, with the way we thought the game. Obviously, Hully got a lot from his dad, of course. And you know what? It really started my career in a sense.
Started your career. It freaking launched you. You were part.
Yeah.
You guys. I remember. I mean, obviously, the nickname hit you guys very quickly and then stuck forever. Hall and Oates, Brett Hall and Adam Oates, because what you guys did was incredible. You were a part of, you know, the top three singles, most goals in a single season: Gretzky, and Brett Hall with 86. And you were the guy that set up a majority of those goals for Brett Hall. It was what was it like suddenly, after all the crap you battled through to get there, to suddenly have stuff like this work for you? What was that like?
You know, once again, as you can imagine, you went from fighting to make it, trying to play, trying to be a regular, and all of a sudden I'm playing with a superstar who's lighting it up, 50 goals in 50 games. So now you're craving this, right? Like you're craving this every day. And I'm telling you, I still crave it to this day. Yarmer Yager still craves it, right? You know, like he's still playing. Like no, like very. Come on, the guy. You don't want, when you have this, you don't want to ever give this up. And I'm no different. It was like you're high on life, right?
What's that feel like? What's that feel like when you like? I mean, I don't use the term. It's not hyperbole when I say you were one of the greatest setup men in the history of the game. What's that feel like when there is that connection that you know, if I get the puck to this guy, and you always did, he's going to finish?
You know what? It's chemistry, right? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for chemistry, and I found my guy, and he found his. And every night, like we couldn't wait to play hockey. Like we just couldn't wait. And you know, we a lot of stories, obviously, and I would say my favorite one was in Montreal, because to play in Montreal was fantastic, right? Just unbelievable. And one night, Holly got a hat trick. And when the announcer who would announce the goal in French and English, when he announced, ladies and gentlemen, Brett Hall hat trick, they gave him a standing ovation. And that was just like, I mean, like we have a lot of those little stories that we talk about a lot, but that was just incredible. I mean, it was like he scored 86 goals, like ridiculous.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Hall said, if you, here's what Brett Hall said about you: that you were so hockey smart. You saw things in where to go and how to beat guys that Holly says I couldn't even fathom. He says just the knowledge of your game. Holly's a great guy, a great finisher, but he doesn't think the game. It just clicks for him. Did you think the game? What did you see out there? Wayne always talks about he knew he was on his game when the game felt like it was slow motion around him. How would you describe it when it's clicking for you?
I would say very similar. And I would say when you're a player that can really, you know, because this is what I do for a living now, right? Like if you're a hockey player that can control the puck. So in other words, when the puck comes around the boards, if you're the fastest at getting it under control, the game is going to be slower to you than the next guy. So being a guy that controlled the puck, the game would slow down. Obviously, Wayne's the best, right? Like the Mario, like to those guys, when you watch them play, it looked like their heart wasn't beating, you know, and for them, it wasn't. So because of that, they see things differently, right? They really do. And I would say that when things are going good, the play slows down, every decision slows down, and you're, obviously a little bit more relaxed, but it all comes from controlling the puck for sure.
Joey Sakic, Hall of Famer, legend, obviously, in his playing days and Stanley Cups. And he said Wayne Gretzky was the best player in the history of the game, no doubt about that. But when it came to playmaking, Adam Oates was the best in the history of the game. What's it like to hear a legend like Joey Sakic say something like that about you?
Well, I mean, that's obviously a huge compliment and very nice of him. I would not say that in front of Wayne, though. Because, Wayne, it's so funny because I grew up near Wayne. Obviously, he's Brantford, and he's only a year older than me. But like my idol was Wayne Gretzky. Like I tried to play hockey like Wayne Gretzky every day. And it's funny because we're basically the same age. But I mean, obviously, that's a very nice compliment from Joe. Fantastic.
There's something your dad said, which I thought was really interesting, and a role he kind of played in you. Hockey dads, and I was a hockey dad, so I'll put myself in the midst of this too. My kid, played junior and stuff, and so I was a hockey dad. And every hockey dad wants to see their kids score goals. Your hockey dad was different, though, and I think it had something to do with his British upbringing and watching English soccer and stuff. Tell our audience what the message was that your dad told you early, that really, rather than making you go down the path of trying to score, really made you the kind of player that ultimately made you a Hockey Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, he came over from England, soccer man. And obviously, when you watch soccer, for us, it's boring, right? But my dad was into the beauty of the game. And the beauty of the game is the control of the ball and passing to each other. And, most games are 1-0, right? There's only one goal. So what do you end up liking? You like the skill. And my dad, new to hockey, basically said, you're a centerman. You have to pass to your teammates. You got to get them to like you. So that was always sort of our mantra growing up was, you're going to be a guy that makes everybody like you. And to do that, they score. You don't. So that's sort of how it all started.
Okay, you bring that up. Everybody like you. And listen, you and I are buddies, so I'm going to go here with you. Not everybody liked you during your career because you stuck up for yourself. Once you got there, and once you understood what was going on, you stuck up for yourself, which kind of ruffled some feathers. And I think one of the first times that happened was in St. Louis, where you were surrounded by guys, Brendan Shanahan, Garth Butcher, Ron Sutter, guys who were making some good coin. And you were being, quite frankly, as somebody who watched you play the game in the late 80s and early 90s, you were at the top of your game and you were really underpaid. And that caused some friction with the Blues. Walk our audience through the way that kind of unfolded and how you felt about all that at that point.
You know what? I would say I felt a little slighted. And you have to understand, it is pro hockey. It is a business, of course. And back then, not every franchise was full of seats. There was salary issues, right? We didn't have a cap, right, like we do now. So, you know what? Salary wise, I was behind, and I just, I could not understand how come they wouldn't fix it. So I said, and you're also getting older, and back then, hockey players kind of played to 31. That was it. That was the big collective bargaining. We argued over that age, 31 to 32, right? So in your mind, I'm 26, 27. I'm running out of time a little bit financially, not hockey-wise, financially. So you know what? You kind of stick up for yourself. It was all about money, of course. In hindsight, would I make the same kind of decisions? I don't know. But it was all on the up and up in a sense. It was just more about like looking for the future, quite honestly.
And here's the pattern that I kept seeing in your career, which is amazing to me. In your own words, you started with Detroit. They didn't want you anymore. You went to St. Louis. Then Detroit regretted it because the media in Detroit and all of us said this was probably one of the worst trades in the history of the Red Wings, moving you on, because then you become Hall of Oates and you and Brett kick butt and do what you did. It didn't work out with St. Louis. They weren't willing to pay the cash. Now you get moved to the Boston Bruins, and then you do it again. You elevate your game to an entire other level. Talk to me about the transition and then your ultimate success with Boston. It just kept saying one guy would give up on you. You'd say, screw it, I'm moving on, and I'll go somewhere else where they want me. And you prove yourself again and again and again.
And you know what? I'm also very lucky in the sense that I went to Boston and I got to play with Ray Bourque and Cam Neely, right? And Joey Juneau as a rookie. So next, chemistry-wise, I'm in a really good puzzle. And statistically, I'm also at that age where you're still growing as a player. So statistically, I lit it up. So of course, when you light it up, you want another raise, right? I mean, you do good, you want a raise. That's basically the rule. So I wanted a raise, and then the Bruins were going through a little bit of transition at that time. And you know what? It was just the same sort of thing. Like, I'm getting older, I want to be compensated. And unfortunately, I'm a late bloomer, right? So I would say they're always worried about the age thing, and they don't expect you to play that long necessarily. But I would say that caused friction there too. And I'm not a guy that doesn't bother me. It doesn't. Like, 2 + 2 = 4 for me. You don't figure? Okay, I can move over there, no problem.
But you just get, I mean, you say chemistry. I laugh when you say chemistry because the chemistry seems to follow you, OT. That doesn't seem like an accident to me. It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm a part
I
of
think
it.
that's more than chemistry. I think that's ability and what you do. No.
I mean, yeah, but it takes two, right? It takes three. There's not too many Connors out there or Cooches out there. Guys need teammates. Draisaitl's pretty damn good too, right?
Yeah.
It takes more than a guy.
You talked about the stats and you put up the stats. In the 5-year window from 1989 to 1984, you were the second highest. I mean, that's a big window. That's not just one good year. For 5 years, from the 89 to 94, you were the second highest point producer in the entire NHL. Number one, obviously, was Gretz. You had 114 points per season over that span. What was that like? Again, like, did you ever feel at some point just go, screw you, you don't believe in me, watch what I can do? Did that help elevate you?
Of course. That's probably a big part of it. And it fuels you because it makes you mad, right? And like, at the end of the day, I'm a guy, I show up for work, and I hope my boss likes me. I'm the guy that wants the boss to give you a raise just because you're doing good. I don't want to be the guy that asks for the raise. I want the guy to give me a raise. That's me.
And you also had no fear of going public with your comments. You were like, there are certain players in the NHL today and coaches and guys who you just want to run with the microphone and say, this guy's going to say something good. Just give him the mic and he's got something to say. You gave us one of the greatest sound bites ever when you were talking about the Boston Bruins. When you were real honest, you just said, look, these guys, I think the word you used was stingy. they won't spend the money to bring in the guys and the talent. They're happy for us just to make the playoffs and then get dumped in the first round. Did that just come out of you because you were pissed, or was that you know what, I got to say something here because we need help here?
I would say that it probably just came out of me. I think it was in Colorado, and some of the decisions were like, oh, come on. It was just one of those interviews afterwards, frustrated, and reporter got me, asked me a question and I mouthed off. But you're mad, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're mad.
Are you, in retrospect, are you happy you said it though? Was it, I mean, I don't want to say that, you were upset with the Bruins organization as players because you love the players, but are you happy you said it because it at that point needed to be said? Because again, there was no salary cap and no basement that had to be spent, and the Bruins just weren't spending it despite having some great talent.
I wish I didn't say it in the sense that I wish it didn't have to get to that point.
Okay.
But I would say that both sides, they weren't giving the player a solution either. They weren't.
Yeah.
So
they weren't giving
get back into
and again. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're sort of backed into a corner a little bit.
Yeah.
At least it felt like that.
They backed you in the corner, but like, I think it was like 2 weeks after your comments, you get dealt to the Caps. What was that like when it's like, oh crap, they didn't like what I had to say? What was that like?
It was, oh crap, they didn't like what I had to say. And kind of like when I said it, I knew it. And you gotta I expected it, and I got dealt, didn't know where it was going to happen. Got dealt to Washington, and I'm like, okay, another adventure, let's go.
And you did it again. Why don't you tell our audience what happened in the 6 years that you were with the Caps? You went from persona non grata in Boston to eventually doing what with Washington? Walk us through that.
You know what? Obviously, first year we ended up going to the finals. It was my first time going to the finals, and very exciting. I hadn't had that opportunity yet, and it's obviously that's the goal every year, and you work really hard, and we had a good team, and we ended up going to the finals. It's fantastic.
You eventually became the captain of the Caps,
Yeah.
after getting shunned over and over and over again. What was it like for you emotionally to kind of every time somebody, you speak your mind, you do what you're going to do, people crap on you, and then you go and prove them wrong? What was that like to continually, repeatedly be doing something like that?
You know what? I never really thought of it like that. I just when I got traded, obviously different situations, different circumstance. In my mind, it was business related,
Yeah.
financially. So the second I walked into the next team, I'm trying to play the best I can for that particular team, and that's how I looked at it. And I'm very fortunate that everywhere I went, I get to play with some fantastic players because there are fantastic players everywhere. So hockey just kind of like I turned another page in hockey, and Washington was no different. And then we got a new owner, a new building. It was very exciting. Play with some great guys there, and you just kind of move on.
You moved on quite a bit then. Then you ended up playing for the Flyers for a while, the Ducks, the Oilers for a while. And you were talking about the fact you were 26 and thinking, I don't have much time left in my career. Man, were you wrong?
Yeah, I know.
What did would you retire at 41 or 42? I don't remember how old you actually were.
I think I was 40.
You were 40.
Yeah, I
So
don't think I
you
was 41 yet.
did you ever in your wildest imagination think you'd play over 1,300 games and have over 1,400 points in the National Hockey League? Adam Oates, the Etobicoke Eclipse lacrosse player, turned tier 2 junior player who went undrafted, and you end up finishing with over 1,400 points in the NHL. In your wildest imagination, was that ever a dream for you?
Not at all. I mean, the dream was to play in the NHL. So obviously, pretty lucky man. Got to play a long time in the league.
And then you had a very special day in June of 2011. Walk us through that. What happened to you on that day?
Well, two things actually. George McPhee called and offered me the head coach of the Washington Capitals, which was, at that time my next sort of like dream. I wanted to be a head coach in the National Hockey League, and then I got a call from the Hall of Fame saying you're in, which was obviously as special as it gets.
What's that like when you hear something like that after all the times over? I mean, this whole time we've been talking on this podcast has been about you proving other people wrong, that they're underestimating you, undervaluing you. And now at the end of the day, you've done it. Like, it's crazy. What was that like to finally hit that point?
You know what? It was, as you can imagine, it was very special for me and my parents and my family. Because growing up in Toronto, the whole family is hockey. Like life is hockey, right? It still is. And to get that accomplishment, which is, very few guys get it, and to be acknowledged as one of them is just an incredible honor.
Here's something that really impressed me. And I'll be honest with you, Otzi, I did not know this before I started digging around a little bit. You left RPI before you graduated. I didn't realize you had gone back to graduate and you got a Bachelor of Science there. Then you got involved in an investment firm to learn the financial side. Then you were co-founder of Old Time Hockey Apparel Clothing, and you ran this I did not know, and I really want you to explain this to me. You ran a men's boutique in the heart of New York City, and you were actually profiled by Harry Rosen. I had no idea you were a fashion guy. Tell me about this.
You know what? My father always wanted me to have something away from the game because the game consumes you for sure.
Yeah.
And you've got time for other stuff. And so like to challenge yourself in terms of other stuff. So I always had these little side gigs and side things. And then one day Because like all the guys, we like our suits, right? We do. And I met this man in New York, and we talked. We became buddies, and we bought a men's clothing store on 69th and 3rd. It was great. Had it for about 7 years.
That's
Fantastic.
unbelievable.
Yeah, fantastic.
Hey, so that's a learning moment. Here's another learning moment. I like to do something on the end of the show, and we've done it with, Trache and Larry Robinson and all the greats along with you. We play 5 fast facts, where there might be questions that might be sitting in the back of people's minds that they would find really interesting. You want to play? I'll ask you a quick question. You give me the quick answer. Okay.
Sure.
5 fast facts with Hockey Hall of Famer Adam Oates. The best teammate that you ever played with?
Brett Hall.
No doubt about it. 86 goals. Come on. Who was the best coach you ever played for?
Mike Odessa.
Really? At RPI? Despite all the NHL guys, he was the guy.
He was the guy.
Wow. Okay. Who did you hate playing against the most, and why?
Chris Chelios.
Because
he was a right D, and I go down the left side, and he was a tough man every time. Every single time.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
What was your favorite NHL city to play in, and why?
Chicago Stadium. Just as people have heard, it's electric. It was small, loud. It was your rival for a couple of my teams. Fantastic.
If you hadn't become an NHL player, what career would you have gone into instead?
Fast facts. I don't know. There was nothing else I wanted to do. Probably be a bum.
Well, but you know what? The good news is you'll never have to find out, because you did it.
Thank God.
You accomplished it. Adam, it's been so great catching up with you, buddy. It's been way too long. I really appreciated you being so generous with your time. And I'm so glad things have gone so well for you, buddy. Congratulations again on all you've accomplished. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
Be well, man. Be well.
You too.
One of the greatest setup men in hockey history, voted one of the top 100 players of all time, Hockey Hall of Famer Adam Oates. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by 7-Eleven and Athletes Care. Before leaving the rink, order your favorite Slurpee, fresh 100% premium Arabica coffee, hot from the oven pizza and wings, pint of ice cream, or even a carton of milk, a dozen eggs, and a loaf of bread from the 7 Now app, and Team 7-Eleven will have your order ready for pickup 24/7. Athletes Care is proud to be celebrating its 25th year, offering sports medicine services to both elite athletes and the general population who require rehab for a new or chronic injury or pain. Go to where the best go. Athletes Care Sports Medicine Clinics, with 24 locations in the Greater Toronto Area and Ottawa. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. 7-Eleven's Overtime Podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. As well, please check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at O-Time Podcast. Until next week, I'm Gino Retta saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast.